Prinhandar, good afternoon and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn How Agile Teams Work. This is the third session in our autumn series where we're aiming to provide you with a foundational understanding of digital and what that means in the context delivery of public services and also Agile as a way to help teams develop their products and services. I'm Mike Erskine, Communications Manager here at the CDPS and part of the Learn Digital Skills and Connecting Digital Professionals service. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available on our Lunch and Learn playlist on YouTube for you to watch back and share with colleagues. Here you can access all our previous Lunch and Learn sessions, which have covered a huge variety of topics to date, from how to build inclusive and accessible digital services to how to run a workshop to map your service. So if you haven't already checked out that playlist, then please do go and have a look and catch up when it suits you. We have set this session up as a webinar, so you won't be seen or heard on screen unless you would like to come forward at the end to ask any questions. In the meantime, as I said, please introduce yourself in the chat and pop any questions in there that might come into your head during the presentation. Today's presentation is only 30 minutes in length, so please try and turn off any other distractions. I would now like to welcome my colleague, James Gibbons, who is our training and learning designer here at the Centre for Digital Public Services, working as part of the Learn Digital Skills service. James has previously worked in a number of different roles across public sector organisations, including education, central government and health, and is now part of the team here at CDPS, responsible for developing and delivering training to support organisations on the path to digital transformation. I will now pass you on to the very capable hands of James. Shmai, James.
Yeah, Mike, thank you. And Croso, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be focusing on building on some of the kind of previous sessions within this series, where so far we've looked at kind of what digital means within a public sector context, some of the delivery mechanisms that are commonly used to help deliver with that. And today we're going to be delving into actually looking at how Agile teams work. And we're going to link this to the Agile values and principles, which my colleague Ebony introduced previously. I really structure this session around three kind of key questions. First of all, looking at how it is that Agile teams work, what the conditions are that they need to kind of thrive in that environment, and then hopefully leaving you with some kind of practical tips to kind of get started on building these within your teams. So I want to kick off and start by referring back to this, which I know Ebony introduced in the last Lunch and Learn session. And this is the Agile Manifesto, which, as she mentioned, was written in 2001. And what you can see on screen now are the 4 Agile values. Now, this was very much developed for computer software in the first instance, but we're seeing this approach utilised much more now in terms of the design and development of products and services. And we really see Agile as a culture, a kind of way of thinking and behaving. And these sets of values and principles really look to kind of capture that. It's not a methodology, first of all, or a strict rule book in terms of how we do things. Agile is much more a kind of culture and a different way of doing things in that approach. And ultimately, these values, they form the basis for how our Agile teams work. And they really encapsulate what it is that us as Agile teams come to value. Now, as you kind of read through these, there's just one thing we want to kind of draw your attention to, and that's this idea that what we're saying here is we value the things on the left over the things on the right, but that doesn't mean that we don't do any of the things on the right when we work in Agile teams. So as kind of a practical example of that, one of the values is about this idea of responding to change over following a plan. Now, that doesn't mean that Agile teams never plan. It simply means that we don't set out a kind of rigid plan of exactly what we're going to do for the next X amount of months and almost have that kind of like a tick box where we're ticking off those milestones as we go through. And instead, we want to kind of consider, what are our shorter term plans that really enable us to kind of test that theory, learn and adapt so that that can inform our plans as we move forward. And here you just see now a summary of the kind of 12 Agile principles, which we'll be referencing throughout this as well. And these we really kind of frame as our guiding lights. When working in Agile teams, these are the things we live by. I always kind of picture it as the thing you might print off and stick on your wall if you were in that kind of office environment, just to remind the team, but also your collaborators, your supporters, how it is that you're looking to work as a team. Now, today we're going to focus on just a few of these, really starting with the idea of kind of working together in cross-functional teams and what that looks like and what that means. Then kind of delving into how we start to deliver value to users early and how we deliver frequently in terms of improvements on that. And then finally, really the need to kind of trust and support our people. And like we said, this is very much about that kind of cultural piece for giving the conditions for Agile teams to thrive. And in our training course, we always kind of frame this as the one key takeaway that we want people to focus on, that they've taken from the sessions in terms of building and developing that culture. So when kicking off kind of the development of new products and services, obviously the starting point is setting them up for success in the very first instance. And part of that is actually the formation of a team. And it's vital that the team ensures that everybody's aligned around the focus, the scope, the priorities, but also who's accountable and how they're going to work together as a team. And that's what we really focused this session today about. And now to keep this manageable, you know, we know this kind of change doesn't happen overnight. And so it can be just kind of starting with one team, really starting small and picking a team that's ensured that they're aligned around that kind of shared goal, problem or challenge that it is that the products and services they're working towards are going to help deliver on. So how do we actually do this? Well, we can start thinking about bringing together people from different teams. And you've just got a graphic on here of, you know, some of the types of teams you might have within your organization. And this approach of moving to this kind of cross-functional delivery team really involves kind of breaking down the silos and shifting away from this kind of traditional commissioning model where teams and people may work at kind of arm's length from each other, to instead forming kind of open collaborative networks focused on those shared goals between those teams. So in the last Lunch and Learn session, I know Ebony covered kind of waterfall and agile delivery and some of the similarities and differences between these. And traditionally, in a waterfall delivery environment, they tend to have teams working in functional silos, as you'll see on the left of your screen here. Now, as you can see from this picture, this is really where we have teams that are made up of, you know, people from the same kind of speciality who are really focused on kind of doing their bit of the work before then ultimately handing on or passing on to the next person or the next team for them to do their part. And so on and so forth. Now, what we would see is rather than having that kind of traditional structure on the left, whereby we have people working in teams focused on their kind of certain specialities, within Agile environments, it's very much suggested and best practice that we work in cross-functional delivery teams, as is shown on the right. So this kind of involves creating teams made up of people from a range of different disciplines or areas of expertise, all aligned around that shared problem, that goal, or that challenge that they're working on. But I guess the question you're asking is why? Well, what we've seen is that it increases team member engagement where there is that common purpose shared amongst the team. And working in this cross-functional delivery approach really develops some of the management skills where team members can start to lead in their area of expertise within that team. Perhaps more importantly, though, it really starts to promote collaboration. And what we see as members of those cross-functional delivery teams really get those opportunities to work with people of a variety of different skill sets and skill levels. It really creates some of those learning opportunities whereby people get the chance to learn from one another as they start to work together in that collaborative environment. And finally, it really improves on that kind of big picture visibility. It really enables people to feel kind of more connected to the bigger picture in terms of what's happening across the organization and seeing that from different perspectives. So I just want to give a kind of simple practical example that really demonstrates the benefits of having this approach and having a team made up of the right people with the right skills from different functions. Now, this is something I've experienced, but typically when kind of developing content within learning environments, we may see a structure similar to this. You know, 3 people working in different teams, working in this very hands-off fashion. So as an example, me as a learning designer, I might develop some of that kind of initial content, pass that on to a kind of content designer before that content actually goes through to translation ahead of being published. And, you know, this approach can work, but there are a number of risks associated with it. Just as an example, you know, the content designer may create something that doesn't reflect the message that I was kind of hoping to portray, perhaps because they don't have that kind of contextual awareness. Or the translator may have challenges, you know, because again, they're not kind of aware of the context that this content has been developed in, or it's written in a way from the onset, which actually makes that kind of direct translation not make sense when moved into a different language. So instead, by combining those individuals and really assembling the team and adopting the trio writing approach, which I know has been mentioned previously, This can help to kind of address some of those challenges by working as a collaborative unit to develop that content together. So as a result, the content creator and translator really understand the context of the piece. They're able to ask questions of myself, and that results in the creation and publication of content that not only meets the needs of users, but is much more accessible in both languages. Now, as mentioned, this is a simplistic example, but it's one that really kind of demonstrates the value of creating that cross-functional team centered around that kind of common purpose. And it's also an example that's relevant to pretty much any organization providing those devolved public services here in Wales, and it also aligns with a number of the digital service standards. It's also an example that kind of utilizes that process and roles which already may be in place within your organizations. Now, as we mentioned, this kind of change doesn't happen overnight. We want to keep it manageable, and like we said, start small, perhaps with just one team, and this could be an example of what you could do in the first instance. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, if we go back to our Agile principles, teams working in this way, their main aims are to deliver value to users early, inspect and adapt, and ultimately deliver those improvements in their products and services frequently. And I know Ebony mentioned this kind of Agile model in the last instance, but it really kind of starts with understanding what the needs of our users are, and then iteratively developing a solution, rather than assuming that we know what the solution is right from the start. And as a result, in terms of the way teams work, this gives them the freedom to explore different solutions and ultimately look at different options for solving the problem. And they'll develop this in phases while kind of testing and learning with users as they go through. It means that in terms of the teams that we're working in, we discover kind of early on whether what we're working on is meeting the needs of users. And it means we can kind of adapt as we learn from that. Now, naturally, we know that within this, that progress isn't going to be linear. Teams are going to deliver solutions, some of which will be really successful, but there are going to be those kind of failures along the way, or those setbacks. And we really need to appreciate that that's okay. Sometimes we do need to take a step or two back in order to take that kind of giant leap forward. And that's the whole ethos of Agile in terms of learning and adapting as we go through. And this is just a picture of a kind of cartoon, which we do use in our training, and we feel really kind of demonstrates this perfectly. When we're adopting this kind of waterfall delivery method that Ebony mentioned last time, as illustrated by the images on top here, the teams themselves, but also the leaders, they may feel like they're making progress. They've moved, in this case, from having a wheel to actually putting that on a chassis, adding the body, and so on and so forth. The user, however, isn't satisfied until the end, when that product is actually delivered to them. The team's focused on kind of identifying what the needs of the users are, identified a solution from that, and delivered it. But in this case, even then, it may not be the ideal solution for the user, perhaps because their specifications have changed, or they haven't had that ability to find out and adapt as they've moved through. Now, instead, when working in Agile teams, what we're focused on is delivering value to the user early, but also frequently as well, testing and adapting as we go through. So in the case of the images here, the initial solution doesn't meet the user needs. And even after that, there are deliveries which seemingly don't make any progress. But ultimately, by taking that information, understanding what the user needs are, learning and adapting, we're able to actually deliver something that really does meet the user needs, and perhaps even surpassing their expectations in the end. And a real critical part of this is this idea of failure. Now, I appreciate, and we have this discussion often within our training sessions, this idea of failure, it can be a very emotive word. So perhaps a better one to use in this instance, this idea of learning, or the idea that kind of failures provide those opportunities to learn. And that's really what Agile teams do best in terms of the way they work, and they learn from that failure. So the point we're trying to get across is that, both teams and leaders of Agile teams, they need to accept that failures are simply just part of this. They're part of the way that these teams work. And ultimately, going back to our principles, we need to continue to support and trust each other to ultimately deliver the best products and services that our teams are working on. And again, just linking this back to something from the last session, when Ebony talked about risk. What we know is that delivering, in this Agile way, it doesn't mitigate risk completely. That risk is always going to exist. But what it does do is it does drastically reduce it. So ultimately, when those failures do occur, which is inevitable along the way, and it has much of a less of an impact in terms of the development of that product and service as a whole. Now, if you just compare that with, the waterfall delivery approach, over time, as is illustrated by this diagram, the level of risk really does increase. And it's often, not until that kind of point of launch, right at the end, that we'll see whether the product and service that we've spent all that time developing meets the need of users. And this is actually where risk is the highest. So, a failure at this point is critical. So within that kind of agile environment, we might have numerous failures along the way, but we're trying to learn and adapt and mitigate some of those risks of having this kind of big bang approach where we test at the end, has our project been a success or a failure? As you mentioned, the whole kind of thing around this is, that cultural piece. It's very much more about the kind of people and creating that environment for agile teams to thrive. And like we said, within our training, that's the thing we really focus on. We want to give people kind of practical tips and tools, and we want their takeaway to be about, developing this culture that really enables teams to self-organize and thrive. So we want to think about actually, how do we create this environment that enables agile teams to do their best work? What is it that those teams actually need in order to get the best outcomes from them? And one of the things that we found is that, teams really need this idea of psychological safety. And there needs to be this culture where people are really able to provide each other with meaningful feedback, but also feel comfortable in admitting mistakes. And ultimately, as we mentioned, with that kind of idea of learning, see those mistakes or those failures as opportunities to learn. And the real reason behind this, the whole idea within Agile, is that it requires such a fundamental change in terms of our attitude, because as individuals working within these teams, we're opening ourselves up to vulnerability. And as an example, working in the service that I'm currently part of, and if I propose an idea and it doesn't actually work well in practice in one of our kind of training sessions and things, I need to know that I'm safe to make that mistake, but also that I have opportunities to learn about it without kind of repercussions from that. That doesn't mean that we don't hold each other to account. We absolutely do. And it doesn't mean that we sweep things under the carpet. It just means that we have that space where we feel that we're able to kind of push boundaries and look to innovate and make changes in the pursuit of better outcomes. Now, the quote displayed on screen is by Dr. Amy Edmondson, who really came up with this kind of idea of psychological safety. And there's a great TEDx talk by her on YouTube, where she really focuses on the importance of this. And she mentions that, every time we withhold that information, whether that's, insightful feedback for colleagues or, admitting a mistake that we've made, we lose those opportunities for individuals in our teams to actually learn. And that in turn kind of reduces innovation and making progress within that way. And interestingly, she references some research she did in a medical setting. And her initial data kind of suggested that better teams were actually making more mistakes. But what she actually found was that instead, the better teams are more willing to discuss their mistakes in the open. And they really focused then on kind of working collaboratively to find ways to reduce those mistakes from ever happening again. So they weren't sweeping them under the carpet. They were still holding people to account, but getting that out in the open and working together collaboratively as a team to find solutions so that those mistakes weren't repeated later on. And further down the line, Dr. Edmondson mentioned, that this is even more critical in environments where there is uncertainty, and that's what makes this particularly relevant for agile teams and agile environments. And one of the things she does talk about in her presentation is this idea of different zones, where we're having this commitment to high standards, but also this psychological safety. And what she really references is it's not just psychological safety that teams need. They also need to have that commitment to high standards. If you've got high levels of psychological safety, but low commitment to our high standards, that can lead to that kind of comfort zone where people don't feel stretched and challenged. They're not pushing to innovate. So we do need that kind of balance of both of these. And ultimately, this is the environment that provides the greatest learning opportunities for teams and individuals. And being in this zone, teams are really committed to that high performance. They're holding to each other to account, and they're accountable to others for that as well. But they also have the psychological safety where they can offer that feedback and try those new things that they actually need in order to thrive in that environment. So we just want to kind of touch on 2 practical tools that you can actually take away from today to actually get started with embedding this within your teams that you're working with. So first up, we have an exercise called the Circle of Safety. And this is an exercise taken from a really useful guide produced by NHS Horizons and their guide to psychological safety. And what this activity does is it enables you to establish, how you're going to build psychological safety up within your team and inviting your team as collaborators to inform how we're going to do this together. Now we understand, there's some kind of standard approaches to building psychological safety, icebreakers when new people are introduced, retrospectives, which I know something Ebony is going to talk on next week, and, certain practices in terms of ways of working. But this exercise is really an opportunity for your team to identify, what are the psychological safety practices that they want to see that are unique to them in terms of their team and their context. And to do this, really easy, all you need to do is draw a kind of circle on a whiteboard or a flip chart, a virtual board if you're working in a kind of remote environment, and simply just ask your team to add examples of behaviours and practices that represent that kind of psychologically safe or unsafe environments. So it's simply a case of putting those safe practices in the circle and those unsafe practices, things they don't want to see outside. And the real point of this exercise is to get teams to identify, their own practices and relate that to their own context. Now, we do find when we run these sessions on some of our training courses, that the out area is somewhat easier to think about for many people. If we think about those kind of practices that damage psychological safety, they're quite easy to identify. We routinely see things such as bullying, criticism, aggression, not following through on commitments and things. But again, the whole point of this activity is to make sure they're as specific as possible to the context that teams are working in. The next tool we just wanted to kind of touch upon when the slide changes. There we go. Is another way that we can actually bring teams together. And this is something called the Team Canvas. Now I know my colleague Elise is going to send out some links to resources afterwards where you'll have access to this. And she may even post it in the chat now. But this is a really useful tool that can be used within kind of agile cross-functional delivery teams, where it's really important to ensure that people have those clear roles and responsibilities to successfully deliver on the kind of vision and roadmap that's been set out. And this is a really useful tool that really captures this in kind of a living team charter. Now, the Team Canvas is a tool, really designed to kind of help with this and develop those practices within teams. It's really useful when you're kind of looking to bring teams together, to clarify what the goals are, but also to figure out, what motivates people, what's going to help them get aligned around these kind of projects or products that they're working on. And it's a tool to kind of structure that conversation with the team and just ensure that everyone's aligned and on the same page. And what we hear is that, groups that go through these kind of sessions using this tool often report kind of higher levels of clarity and alignment with much less friction and conflict within the team because they've had that discussion to establish, how they're going to work. Now, as we mentioned, if you want to facilitate a session like this with your team, we will be sending out links to resources. The creators have really helpfully put together a number of kind of templates, but also guides of how to run different sessions with teams using this tool, which will come out after the session. And the Circle of Safety and the Team Canvas, they're 2 really practical tools that can be used to bring team members together and create that shared understanding in terms of ways of working. But in the next Lunch and Learn session, my colleague Ebony, they'll be taking this a step further, looking at some of the kind of agile ceremonies and really looking at how we embed this in terms of the ways we're working on a day-to-day basis. So at this point, I'm going to draw the session to a close. And if there's any questions in the chat, I'll be happy to take those.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. I'm just going to come back in there now. I'm just going to try and get myself on screen. There we go. Fantastic. If any questions for James, anyone want to put anything into the chat, that would be great. We'll give people a minute or so to think about that. In the meantime, James, yeah, I've been working at CDPS for over a year now, and when I came to CDPS, this was all very new to me. The words agile and how these teams work. So I think a question I always like to ask was, a lot of the things I was banded around, all these different words and different agile words. One of them was this working in the open. Now, what do we, and then you talk about there about how sometimes we try to brush things under the carpet and not talk about the things that, have gone wrong, and those things that really challenged us. I mean, coming from comms and media, that's been, for me, we've always tried to put the PR spin on things, when we've done press release and like just to show the shine and what's going well, but never really uncovered the stuff that has really challenged us. So could you really give us sort of an idea of what we mean by working in the open and how that kind of works internally, but also then, how you can actually make that sort of even bigger in terms of externally as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess in terms of within agile environments, this is quite a useful governance moment in terms of, assessing where we're at the moment, what kind of things we've been working on, what things have gone well, but also, as you mentioned, identifying where those kind of challenges have arisen. And, again, just, exactly as it suggests, getting that out in the open, not trying to brush it under the carpet, thinking about how we hold ourselves as a team accountable and, being upfront in terms of the challenges that we faced. Ultimately, as we mentioned, that's what provides us those opportunities to learn and adapt our products. And, as we mentioned in the session as well, sometimes you do need to take that step back or have that small failure to actually shine a light on some of the things that are actually going to give you more progress in the future. And this is just a way to, I guess, get that out there, make sure people are aware of, some of the challenges that have been faced, and also why we're kind of pivoting into different directions based on what we've learned, because ultimately that's part of the whole principles of why we're doing this in terms of working in this way.
Yeah. And I guess that's when we hear things like week notes and people doing week notes. Is that the kind of culture you're trying to create then? Is that sort of openness, even with the rest of the organization, not just within your own team of what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's about finding something that works for you and your team. This shouldn't be a kind of onerous task, a additional bolt on, something else to do. So those week notes, show and tells, those kind of things can be really powerful. And just in terms of getting it out there, practical, almost like a product demo, this is the thing we're working on, these are some of the challenges we faced. And these are some of the steps that we've taken to mitigate it. These are some of the things we haven't going forward. And, so it is something we do touch on in the training session. I know there's resources on our website as well about that. But I think that's a really important part in terms of finding what is most relevant for you and your team to ultimately work the best for you.
Right. We've got a question coming here from Sarah Price. So thank you, Sarah, for posting this. So Sarah says, do you have any tips on how to handle introducing the difference between old style formal projects and agile to teams who maybe aren't expecting an agile project?
That's a really good question. It's a really big question as well. And again, that's something we do touch on within our training courses in terms of, I guess, this shift from a project to a product mindset. So how we move from things being seen as projects, which are very definitive in terms of, this is going to be finished in X amount of months, to actually having these kind of living, breathing products that are going to carry on for as long as they need to kind of be sustained. In terms of, that is where we can support. We do there are links to our kind of training courses available on our website. We do currently offer 3 key courses with that. One is about digital and agile, the foundations, which is very much about introducing teams. So, I know that Sarah's mentioned there maybe that, it's an introduction to agile. That's something we touch on, giving people the kind of the foundational knowledge they need to kind of start with this. We normally see the best results then when teams take a bit of a break then between attending some of the other training courses, so they get to kind of put some of that into their own context and start to trial some of those things before they then go on to kind of the next steps, where we have 2 options. One really focused on teams, where we look at the kind of real practical aspects of how these agile teams work and moving from this kind of project to product mindset. But one also for leaders as well. So how do we set that kind of organizational environment, culture, and vision that's ultimately enabling the culture for those teams to thrive?
Great, thanks, James. Really comprehensive answer that was. Sarah, I hope that answers some of your questions there. And I know Elise also put a link to in the chat there to our upcoming training courses. I think we're fully booked at the moment until the end of the year, but we are taking sort of registrations of your interest if you are in those courses for 2024. Brilliant. So if there aren't any more questions, I'll just like to move on just to some feedback that we'd like to get on our Lunch and Learn. So if you do have time, you can, at least we'll put the link into the Menti chat now. We do a survey that we run on Menti. So if you put menti.com and enter the code 51103038, we'll be keeping this open for the next couple of days as well for people to contribute to who couldn't be here today. And the questions that we just want to ask is, how much do you agree, disagree with the following statements? So what we have a sort of a scale to say the Lunch and Learn made sense to me. I learned something new today, and I would like to start trying these techniques in my own organization. Or you might still have questions as well, which we've asked there. And we've also asked, what is your main takeaway from today's session? And finally, this is session 3 of 4 of our autumn series. So only one more in this series to go. We're just starting to sort of plan out our winter series, which will take place from December. But I've popped in a question there into the Menti to say, what would you like to see covered at future Lunch and Learns? So we'd really like to be guided by you about the topics that you would like to see covered. So yeah, please let us know in that on that Menti survey what the sort of topics you'd like to see covered at future Lunch and Learns, and we can make sure that we can try and accommodate the topics that are really interested to you. And as I said, coming up, the final session in our Lunch and Learn Autumn series is how to run Agile ceremonies. So this is going to be, again, delivered by Ebony. So it's been very much a double act, this series, between James and Ebony, our training team here at the CDPS. So that session will take place in a couple of weeks' time, so week after half term. So I know there'll be a number might be after half term here in Wales, but pick that back up on the Monday we return, how to run Agile ceremonies. And again, if you haven't already signed up for that session, please do. And finally, before you go, wanted to make you aware of this. At this year's National Ystwyth for Wales, we launched a book on trio writing, designing bilingual content for user-centered services. And as James touched upon in his presentation, trio writing is a more agile and collaborative approach to developing content in 2 languages. So this trio writing book very much has been a community effort. It's involved people across the public sector, private sector, and third sector, and is a way to bring those voices together. So you can buy a physical copy or download the e-version of the book for free. So again, I think we'll pop a link into this chat, but we will be following up with an email to all the people that registered for today's session with links to everything that was covered in today's session and a link to the recording that you can share with colleagues. And I'm exhausted now going through all of that. Thank you, Diolch. It was a really good session. Thank you, James, for taking us through that today. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, have a good rest of the day.